All right, the Apostle Paul, we're doing this, we turned to 20, right? So we have 20-year celebration, and that was last month, and now we're really looking more about forward. What are we doing going forward? Let's go. That's great. We don't want, the last 20 years was awesome. The next 20 years are going to be more awesome. But we got to do something. We got to go. We got to do something. That's what this series is all about. Apostle Paul writes in 1 Timothy 6, you, man of God, or woman, whatever, but he's talking to a particular dude here. You, man of God, flee from these things. Now, you don't know what he's talking about, but that doesn't sound like Paul at all. If you've read much about Paul, maybe through the book of Acts or any of his writings, in the New Testament, that's not his personality. He's not a runner, right? He's more of a fighter. He's a confronter. Before he was a Christian, he was the guy who would confront people who were Christians because they disagreed religiously, and he would rally the troops and actually put people to death because they believe what we believe. And then he later on became a believer himself. So he's not a guy to run away. He's a guy to confront. He's a fighter. He's going to jump into things. This is the guy who years later, after he himself was a Christian, was stoned by other zealous Jews who were against him. They left him. They drug him outside the city to die. They assumed he had died, but he didn't. And when he got up, he didn't walk away in shame. He didn't feel defeated or anything. He got up and walked back into the city like, well, maybe they need to hear that. Maybe they need to hear that again. I don't know. He's a confronter. He's a go-getter, not a flee these things type of guy. He doesn't run from anything. He tells yet, however, this young preacher named Timothy says, you, man of God, flee from these things, which begs the question, what? Why would Paul, a fighter, tell a young preacher to flee from something? What's he so afraid of? What's he so terrified of that this young preacher is going to get hurt by? Well, you go back one verse, and you get the answer. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many. Now, sometimes we jump to conclusions here, but you've probably been around long enough to know better than that. A close look at the verse tells you money itself isn't the problem. Okay, there's no problem. It's not saying you can't gather money or have a good income. It's not bad to strive to have a better income than you have now or to improve your station in life or anything like that. He isn't saying that you shouldn't save or invest money. It's the craving of money that becomes an issue. And maybe you've noticed by now that craving has nothing to do with how much you already have. It's how much you want. It's what you don't have. It's that unsettled spirit that makes you feel like you never have enough. And that can be a challenge whether you're a billionaire or whether you are making minimum wage doing something different, barely making enough to get by. You can have the same unhealthy craving for more. When I was young, the Planet of the Apes movies were coming out. And I'm talking like the old school, like the original ones, right? The ones that the new ones are, trying to improve and everything. But I watched them too. But as a kid, I was fascinated, loved the Planet of the Apes movies. I'd watch every movie like several times. That was before they'd come on the TV because you had 3 channels, right? So you'd line up at the movie theater, and I don't know how many times I went and saw each Planet of the Apes movies. I loved them so much that I thought about it. It wasn't just like a movie you do and then go home and forget. Like it became part of my imagination, my fun, my playtime. We had like an acorn, an oak tree, whatever, and had acorns in our yard, and I would gather acorns, and they would become my ape army, right? And so just in my own little world, we had a big pile of sand where my dad was doing cement work, so I always played in the sand, and I'd made a city out of sand and had the acorns going through there, and then I'd bring the hose and drown them all because they were killing people, and I spent hours and just fascinated about the whole Planet of the Apes movie and all the stuff with it. Eventually, they came out with these Planet of the Apes 8-inch action figures. Cheryl calls them dolls. They are action figures. All right, so let's get the vocabulary correct in the beginning, right? And here's Cornelius. And I'd go to the store and I'd look at Cornelius Looks amazingly similar to Caesar, if you're into the Planet of the Apes movies. And I just like, I had to have, this Planet of the Apes 8-inch figure, action figure. I had to have it, and I would dream about it, and I wished I could have it, and I did everything I could to gather my little pennies and nickels and dimes, and I'd go into where my mom would trade purses, and she'd leave money behind, and I'd go in there and dig for money there, and eventually I got Cornelius, and it was grand. I got back to the car. My mom sent me in. She knew all I was doing it, and she was all happy for me. And I got my 8-inch action figure, and that joy lasted for like, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, because I realized I only have this one ape. That's not much for a Planet of the Apes. You got one. Right? I mean, what good is that? And it's just the chimpanzee. There's orangutans that were like the lawgivers. I need to get what is it? Dr. Zayas or something. I can't remember his name. And so I had to get him. So eventually I got him. Oh, and that was a great day. Then I thought, wait a minute. You have the lawgivers and the scientists and the leaders and that stuff. Now I need an army. And they sold the gorilla. So I went and got a gorilla. Now gorilla is really great, but what kind of an army is one? That's not much of an army. So I had to have more. And never satisfied. I wanted more and more and more. No matter how many I had, I always wanted to have one. I craved one more. I would think about it. I would dream. I'd try to figure out, where can I get money? I mean, what can I do to get the next one? And it consumed me because I craved it. I still have. I only got one left. This is an action figure, right? Cheryl, even last service, called it a doll, and it was very sad. We're going to put him right up there. He's going to keep an eye on you guys. He's my army man. It was something that I just couldn't get out of my mind. I never had enough. Paul says, and then now, first of all, you're probably never craved these. Maybe some of you did. Any of you do the Planet of the Apes thing? I'm like just the old guy, right? Did you do the Planet of the Apes action figures? Maybe, kind of. I mean, I was a head and healthy thing with this. There's nothing wrong with Planet of the Apes action figures, right? But when you're never satisfied with having enough, that's when you can cross some lines once in a while. It can lead to what Paul says, maybe even wandering from the faith or all kinds of grief, like sleepless nights, wishing you had one more. What? Wait, really? Really? Out of all the things going on in the world, all I could think about is, how do I get one more action figure? That consumed me as a kid, though. Now, your cravings are probably much more refined than my little elementary school year age cravings. Maybe you spend a lot of time on Amazon, and you're like, I just got to get one more thing, one more bright, shiny object, or going through the stores of Target or Walmart, whatever, and you don't really have anything you need, but you spend $100 when you leave, and you're like, did I need any of that? But it happens. We've all been there. We've done that. Or maybe it's guns. I just need one more gun. I know some of you guys. I need one more gun, or one more pair of shoes. That's what, when I get that extra pair, I don't have a terracotta shoes. I need to get some of those, whatever. And you have to have that. Or if I just have a different purse. My mom had a pile of purses. That's where I collected money. She knew it. She left money behind for me, thinking I didn't know. Thinking I assumed she didn't know, but she knew. She told me that. Or maybe you have to stop by that mega store to pick up one more fishing lure, or whatever it is. I mean, we all have our thing, right? Paul says, be careful. None of it's wrong. It's not bad to have an action figure or a lure or a shoe or a gun or whatever. None of that's bad. But when you can only have enough, that's when it gets to be trouble. When you start craving things and you have this unhinged craving for stuff, that can lead you to all kinds of trouble. City officials who embezzle all kinds of money to feed their travel habits or gizmo habits at home. They knew televisions or knew whatever, and they slip a little off the side. The business person who cheats their clients or mistreats their employees because they just want to make a little more. If I just make a little more, I'll be happy, but that's not good enough, and they mistreat people. The carnival used to come to town, and I've told you carnival stories before. I don't know if I've told you this part. And as a kid, we'd run and they'd give us jobs, right? Like overnight, we'd help put rides together and pay us $20 or something. That was really cool. But also, we would say, hey, can we help you run your carnival games? You know, and they're like the people working the carnival were like, yeah, we'll take some time off and let the kid in there and do the thing. Still to this day, I think, where were my parents? But anyway, that's beside the point. I would have never done that with my kids. It's a different time. And I remember 1 or 2 years, I was the balloon blower upper, you know, at the dart game, right? So I'd sit there and just blow up balloons all day long and throw them in a thing, and then they'd put them up on the board, and people would pop them, and I'd blow them up. So I did that for a couple of years. And then there were a couple of years where I did, if you remember, I don't know if they still have these, like the stretch glass pop bottles, the real stretchy ones. They put colored water in it, and it was so pretty, and you'd throw the rings, and if you got the ring on you got the pop bottle. And I was really good at luring people into the stand and getting them to play the game, because they're like, oh, look at the cute little kid, you know, yeah, I'll give you $1. And so they would hire me, and I would do it, and it got to the point that I was doing so well, they would just leave, right? So I was all alone running the stand, and they'd give me like a little cloth, like a carpenter's belt thing. We usually would put nails in, but I would put the money in there and make change for everybody and do their rings and all that kind of thing. Well, this was during the time when I was craving more action figures. And I had no job. I'm a kid, you know. And it occurred to me at some point, you know, they're not paying me very much here, and I keep stuffing dollars into these pockets. What if I once in a while just slipped it into my regular pocket? And I started doing that. So all day long, every once in a while, I'd slip up $1 or $2 into my pocket. And at the end of 4 days, I could have $7,500. I stole that from the outstanding citizen carnival worker who hired a child to do, to do his job. Nonetheless, that's beside the point. And then I would go and I'd buy more action figures. Yeah. Paul, the apostle, knows the heart of man. He knows who we are. So he tells Timothy, he said, you know what? Just flee the craving of stuff. Because if it controls you, you'll make all kinds of choices, all kinds of poor decisions that you wouldn't make. Let's put this verse in context, because we just kind of picked out a couple of verses. Let's look at the whole little context here. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 12. Paul says, godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. If we have food and clothing, we'll be content with these. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation, a trap, many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. By craving it, some have wandered away from the faith, pierced themselves with many griefs. You, man of God, it's a young preacher, you, man of God, flee from these things. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take a hold of eternal life, which you were called, and about which you have made a good confession in the presence of many witnesses. Again, in this context, he's not saying you can't have a good job, or you can't live a good life, or live in a nice home, or drive a nice car. I mean, that's not the point. The point is the craving part. That are you willing to cross lines to get more than what you should have? Does it consume you more than say, pursuing godliness and righteousness and things? So Paul gives us 3 ideas here of how to resist, because I think we all battle with this at some level, you know, and maybe it comes and goes, and you get it down and then battle it later, you know. But so he gives us 3 helpful ways to resist this never-ending craving for more. I don't crave 8-inch action figures anymore. Sometimes I buy shirts. I didn't need this shirt. And some of you going, why did you buy that? I think that's why I buy it. I buy these wild shirts, and it's just, they're great conversation pieces. I have a really colorful one I've worn here before. I had it at the convention last week, and I thought, okay, day 1 I'm going to wear that, and the rest I'll wear like normal shirts. And I'm walking around, and you would not believe the conversations I have with all kinds of people with these shirts. This guy, total stranger, I love your shirt. And I said, oh man, people love it or hate it. He goes, oh, it's not my style. I said, it's not my style either, but it leads to great conversations. And that's how I kind of have some of these. But so I had one, I should get two, right? Well, it was on sale, so I bought it, I didn't need it, I wasn't looking for it, but it came in my email box. I'm like, cool. So I'm not saying I got this all figured out. Sometimes I buy dumb things like shirts I don't need. But here are some helps to help us resist the craving for more. The first thing is to pursue contentment. That's in verse 6. Godliness with contentment is great gain. If we have food and clothing, we'll be content with these. It takes forever to get that down. Probably till the day we breathe our last breath, right? The Greek word here is for contentment means to be completely sufficient. Right? It's the idea of needing absolutely nothing. It carries the idea of fulfillment, satisfaction, completion. We're told in Colossians by the Apostle Paul that we are complete in Christ. We have everything we need in Jesus. The very fact that Christ is in you and has completed his work of grace in you is all that anyone really needs. So godliness with contentment is great gain. Not thinking, the gain isn't you get more stuff. The gain means you're completely happy and content in life whether you have more stuff or not. If you have some, great. If not, great. Doesn't matter. I have Jesus. What else do I need? I think honestly we have to remind ourselves sometimes of that because we live in a very consumer-driven world, right? And to be reminded once in a while that really all I need is Jesus. I'm reminded of that every time we go to Zimbabwe. I can get caught up in all the stuff, right? And I go there and they have literally nothing. And they're so full of joy. Like, well, how do you do that? Well, because they have contentment. They're fine with what they have. They have food, not always. But when they have food and shelter, what else? They have Jesus. What else do they need? And they're so full of joy. Me, I'm like, I need a different car. I need a bigger house. I need more shoes. I need another shirt. Look at that. Oh, that'll get some conversations. I better buy it. It's on sale. How about I could have been fine without it, right? My sins have been paid. What else do I need? My eternity is secure in his grace. I need more, right? I'm complete in his mercy. God loves me more than I can even comprehend. What do I even need in this world? One of the authors of Proverbs, this isn't Solomon, but there's a couple other guys that throw stuff in once in a while at the end. In chapter 30, one of the other guys says, it's like a prayer, give me neither poverty nor wealth. Just keep me here somewhere in the middle. I don't want to be so poor I can't eat. I don't want to be so wealthy I don't think I need you anymore, right? Give me neither poverty nor wealth. Feed me with the food I need. Otherwise, I might have too much and deny you, saying, who's the Lord? I don't need him. I got this, right? Or I might have nothing and steal, profaning the name of my God. So I was talking to a guy this week at the conference. He's a retired surgeon, so he's got quite a stockpile of very high income job over a series of decades. A very wise man. He's not struggling financially in any way. A man of great joy. And I had a conversation, and when he left, a guy leaned over and said, he lives in a trailer. Like, what? He lives in a trailer. He said, you would never know his wealth, ever, if you see how, what he wears and what he drives and where he lives. Wow. Now, I don't know what he lived in when he had children and, raising family. I don't know. It was probably a later years thing. The kids are gone. Well, let's just downsize. Let's get a trailer. What else? What do we need? He spends a lot of time in Africa using that wealth to help people, to build their lives. I mean, he doesn't just throw it around. He just helps them build their lives, help them get an education, help them learn how to farm. Things beyond just a gift. And he's so full of joy. Now, not everyone who lives on a surgeon's salary needs to live in a trailer. That's not what I'm saying here. But I think everyone who craves more myself included, can certainly learn a lesson of contentment from a surgeon who lives in a trailer. Yeah, he's got, that's good. Another way to help resist this craving for more is to keep a healthy perspective of worldly things. Verse 7 says, we brought nothing into the world, we can take nothing out. And we know that, but we don't really act like we know that, I've never heard of a child be born with an armful of toys. We pour them on them. Grandpa, right? I mean, I'm guilty. Hey, you better have another toy because you only have, a box. You got to have 2 boxes. You don't have enough. Oh, I saw this. You must have it. So we kind of train our children young to do this, and grandparents are bad at this. But we bring nothing into this world, and we all know we'll take nothing out of it when we leave. Not even our bodies that we treasure so much. We even leave them behind. Our spirits go on, We leave everything behind. That's a healthy perspective to have when you're managing your budget. This understanding that everything you own belonged to God before you received it, and it was his when you had it in your possession. You were a steward of what's his, and when you're gone, you're going to leave it all behind and someone else is going to take it. The government will get their share, and that'll get dispersed, and your family members might get some, whatever. It's still God's money after you leave. You came with nothing, you leave with nothing. So our goal in this life is to use whatever he blesses us with in a way that brings him glory and brings others to faith. That's true whether you make $100 a year, or $100,000 a year, or did anybody here happen to win $1.6 billion last night? No, anybody check? I'm just checking because we'll change the sermon to tithing real quick. If no, we're good. Okay, it's the same principle though. No matter what goes through your budget, God's given you an income to provide you shelter and a place in your family and provide food and necessities, and you have freedom and blessing, and God blesses you with all kinds of fun stuff, even frivolous shirts, just, hey, have a little fun. It's not sinful that I bought a shirt. I just didn't need it, I'm having a little fun with it, and I'll have great conversations about it, but I didn't need it. So enjoy what God blesses you with, but use that freedom to be a blessing to God and to people around you as well. Don't forget to keep that eternal perspective on things and use his resources to honor him and further his kingdom. Flee from anything that warps your perspective into thinking you actually own anything. We like to hang on. Our children learn that quickly too. Oh, here's all these toys. Don't you dare touch my 8-inch action figure. I didn't call it that as a kid. But, I just have to win the doll war. It's not a doll. We cling on to things. But flee anything that warps your perspective. Because if you let yourself go there, you'll never own enough. You'll just never, whatever it is, you'll never have enough. Never have enough. King Solomon found that out. He had everything he could have and everything he could dream of. They had shiploads come in every day from foreign countries, bringing baboons and horses and spices and gold and so. Everything you can imagine. What was he going to do with all that stuff? And it just piled up and piled up. And at the end, what did he say? It's all vanity. It's all chasing after the wind. I just kept gathering. I needed more. I never got enough. What a waste of time. What a waste of my life. That's read Ecclesiastes to put yourself in some grounding if you ever find yourself going there. The third way to resist this craving is to pursue godliness over wealth. Right? So he's saying flee from these things, and he tells you to pursue something else. You, man of God, flee from these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of eternal life, which you were called, about which you have made a good confession in the presence of many witnesses. If you're going to pursue something, and we're hunters, we pursue things. If you're going to pursue something, how about if you make it bigger and better than a Planet of the Apes 8-inch action figure, or a shoe, or a shirt, or whatever? Pursue righteousness. Pursue godliness, pursue faith, pursue love, pursue spiritual endurance. So when challenges come in life and things are hard, you don't give up because you've been pursuing faith, so you were ready and you were founded and grounded when bad times came. Pursue gentleness towards other people because there's so many reasons not to be gentle. They pull out in front of you, they make you angry, they irritate you, whatever. Pursue gentleness, he says, rather than stuff. Your calling is higher. Your purpose is grander, if that's a word. You have better things to think about and worry about than the petty comforts of this world. Man of God, flee those things and run to your higher calling. I love Timothy. Love. Maybe we'll go through that next year too. I say all that to remind you of what we're talking about now as a church. What's next? What's next? What are we doing? I mentioned last week, if you weren't here, this will catch you up. If you were here, this will remind you. There's 5 things every church needs to focus on to be efficient. They may, in a smaller church, be volunteer. The larger you get, the more they become staff members. At some point, they're all 5 full-time staff people, and they start hiring people underneath them. I mean, it's depending on how big the church goes. This is the 5 things in order of importance. The biggest bucket is the biggest thing that affects the most people: worship, and then the children's ministry, and the youth ministries, and the adult ministries, the small groups and stuff. The operations and finance, going to make sure things are organized well and all that kind of thing. So we've added depth to all of those areas in the last few months. When we planted a church and we had several people move, and then COVID, we had a vacancy in some of those areas, and so we're regrouping, and we've been restructuring here the last several months, year and a half or so, and we're adding depth to all of these teams. And we started having a conversation lately, like that we need to move forward now with our next step. What are we doing? Let's go. Let's get going, right? And so we're looking at the biggest bucket, the first bucket of worship. What would it take to get John Ferrix on staff as a church? John does a pretty good job, wouldn't you say? Yeah, right. Was that Dad? No, it was somebody else. It came over there somewhere. I thought, yeah, son. And we had a struggle because as he was, doing the over-the-road trucking thing, as diesel fuel prices went up, had to work more to be less, so we'd miss some Sundays in the summer. We were kind of punting each week, like who's leading worship, and what are we going to do? And it's kind of disorganized and trying to make things happen. And so we started having conversations. Okay, what can we do to get you here more to make sure at least weekends? And then and what would it take to be part-time or full-time or whatever? Like there's a big range. We're still having the conversations. We're still trying to figure out. There's nothing for sure on anything, other than we have set aside some budget to start with a part-time situation. CEM, the Church Planting Organization, is going to be talking about maybe setting some aside to help a little bit as well. And then the third rung is we thought we'd talk to you all, say, what do you want to do? And as we said last week, there's no right or wrong answer. This isn't a shakedown. This isn't a shame or begging or pleading. No one's going to pull you upside down and shake you and see if any change falls out of your pockets. This is just where are you as a church? And so we've asked the question, how much extra would you be willing to give to bring him on staff? Because he's a value beyond worship as well. He has other gifts and talents that can fill in a lot of gaps that I don't have, and we can complement each other very well. And so we'll do that next week. We've asked everyone to pray about him, to speak to each other as a family, to say, well, where are we at? And if that figure is 0, that's okay. No one's like going to look at you like, what do you mean you have nothing? Times are tough. I get it. Your gas prices are higher too. Your food prices are higher too. We totally get it. We just didn't want to say no for you. So if you're like, man, it's valuable to me to have him on, then we're going to say, well, how valuable is it to you? Do you have an extra $20 a week or a month or whatever figure? Do you have an extra $100 a month you can throw in? I don't know. That'll be your answer, and we'll figure out a way. We'll have to do that next week. Maybe we'll have you stand up individually and report. No, we won't do that. We'll keep it confidential and secret and everything like that. And it's not a pledge, right? We're not going to be calling you in 6 months saying, well, you said $10 and you only gave $5. I mean, it's in your heart of hearts, where do you think you're at, honestly? Not what do you want to do, what do you hope you could do, but what do you see yourself doing if you just start putting a little extra in? What does that look like? And we'll put all that together, and that'll give the leadership an idea of where we're at. That gives John an idea, well, where we're at, so their family can have a conversation. What does this look like? How much does he have to work outside? How much, it's just, it's all a moving target. So we don't have definite answers, but you'll be a third wave of answers when we get, we'll know from CEM fairly quickly in the next few weeks. We're ready to go now on what we budgeted, so we need to have that conversation, and then it'll be where you guys are at. Make sense? So that's what this is all about. As we as a church pursue kingdom things, kingdom things cost money. It's just what it is. We're asking John to not work out there so that he can work here. That costs us money because that's just how it works. So we want you to pray about it, talk about it as a family, think it through. Next week we'll give you an opportunity to come up with some type of answer. Oh, that was close. This guy's 45 years old. And then we'll just go from there. So I hope you understand the heart on here. This truly isn't a shakedown. It's a where you at.